The gray autumn sky seemed to mirror the sadness that hung over the cemetery that cold afternoon. Aria Montgomery, a 32-year-old woman with wavy brown hair and tearful green eyes, stood motionless in front of her parents' coffins. Her black dress rippled gently in the breeze as she struggled to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. The crowd around her was a blur of sympathetic faces and murmurs of condolence. Aria could barely process the words of comfort that reached her ears. Her mind was caught in a spiral of memories. Her mother's warm smile, her father's deep laughter, the family dinners that now seemed so far away. "I'm sorry for your loss, Aria," said a familiar voice. She turned to see Victor, one of the longest-serving executives in her parents' company. His tired eyes reflected genuine sadness. "Your parents were extraordinary people. They built not just a company, but a family." Aria nodded, unable to form words. Victor gently squeezed her shoulder before walking away, leaving her alone again with her thoughts. As the ceremony drew to a close, Aria felt a presence beside her. It was Damon, her husband, a tall, well-built man with perfectly combed blonde hair and an impeccable suit. He put his hand on her back, a gesture that should have been comforting but which Aria found strangely cold. "It's time to go," said Damon, his voice low but firm. Aria hesitated, her eyes still fixed on her parents' coffins. I just need one more moment," she whispered. Damon sighed, impatient. "Aria, we have a lot to discuss. The company isn't going to run itself." Something in the coldness of his words made Aria shudder. She turned to face him, surprised by the hardness she found in his blue eyes. "Damon, we've just buried my parents. Don't you think we can wait a while before talking business?" A humorless smile crossed Damon's lips. "Actually, no. That's exactly what we need to talk about." He pulled her to one side, away from the last few guests still lingering in the cemetery. "What are you talking about?" Aria asked, confused and irritated by her husband's insensitivity. Damon looked around, making sure they were alone, before turning to Aria. His eyes shone with a cold determination she had never seen before. "I'm going to inherit the $150 million company. Don't you agree? Divorce!" The words hit Aria like a punch in the gut. She took a step back in disbelief. "What? Damon, what are you talking about?" "You heard me, Aria," Damon replied, his voice now charged with impatience. "Your parents' company is worth $150 million. I want to take it over. If you don't agree, I'll file for divorce and fight for every penny in court." Aria felt as if the world was spinning around her. Damon's words echoed in her mind, each syllable like a sharp knife cutting through the illusions she had cultivated about her marriage. Are you blackmailing me? On the day of my parents' funeral?" Damon shrugged, without remorse. "Business is business, darling. I've invested a lot of time in this marriage, waiting for this moment. Now it's time to reap the rewards." The tears that Aria had struggled to hold back all day finally began to fall. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of anger, of betrayal. "You never loved me, did you? Was it all for money?" A cold smile crossed Damon's face. "Love? Aria, we both know that marriages like ours are arrangements. I brought my connections and my experience to the table. Now I want my share." Aria felt a wave of nausea rise in her throat. She turned away from Damon, staggering slightly. "You're a monster," she whispered. "No, I'm a businessman," Damon retorted. "Think about it, Aria. You don't have the experience to run a company of this size. Leave it to me and we can settle this civilly." At that moment, something inside Aria broke. Years of doubts and insecurities dissipated, replaced by a fierce determination she didn't even know she possessed. "No, she said, her voice shaking with anger. "You will not get your hands on my family's company. Ever." Damon laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Do you really think you can stop me? Good luck with that." He turned and began to walk away, leaving Arya alone among the graves. She watched her husband's back disappear into the distance, feeling more alone than ever. On shaky legs, Arya reached for her phone. Her fingers automatically found Lena's number, her best friend since college. After 3 agonizing rings, Lena's worried voice filled the line. "Arya, is everything all right?" Arya took a deep breath, trying to control the tremor in her voice. "Lena, I need you. Can I come to your house?" "Of course, darling. I'm waiting for you. What happened?" "I'll tell you when I get there," Arya replied, already moving towards the parking lot. It's about Damon, about everything." As she drove to Lena's house, Arya felt her world crumbling around her. But amidst the chaos and pain, a small flame of determination began to grow. She wouldn't hand over her family's legacy without a fight. No matter what Damon thought, she wasn't weak. And she would prove it, even if it was the last thing she did. The morning sun seeped through the curtains of Lena's apartment, casting a soft light on Arya, who was sleeping restlessly on the sofa. Her eyes opened slowly, the reality of the previous day's events coming back like a relentless wave. Lena emerged from the kitchen holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she said softly, placing a cup on the coffee table. "How are you feeling?" Arya sat up, running her hand through her disheveled hair. "Like I've been hit by a train," she murmured, taking the cup gratefully. The rich aroma of the coffee filled her senses, offering a brief moment of comfort. Lena sat down next to her, her brown eyes full of concern. "Arya, about what you told me last night. Are you sure you want to face Damon? He seems determined." Arya took a sip of coffee, letting the hot liquid warm her body. "I don't have a choice, Lena. That company, it's all that's left of my parents. I can't let Damon destroy it out of greed." Lena nodded, a determined glint appearing in her eyes. "Well then, we'd better get to work. As a lawyer specializing in corporate law, I can assure you that Damon won't have an easy battle." The 2 women spent the next few hours poring over documents and files. Lena took notes furiously, occasionally frowning or muttering to herself. "Arya," Lena finally said, looking up from a pile of papers, "did you know that your parents have made some interesting changes to the structure of the company in recent years?" Arya shook her head, confused. "What kind of changes?" Lena pushed a document towards her. "It seems that they've created a series of protection clauses. Basically, they've made it almost impossible for anyone outside the family to take full control of the company." A glimmer of hope lit up in Arya's chest. "So, Damon can't just take over the company?" "Not without one hell of a fight," Lena confirmed, a smile forming on her lips. "But we still need more information. There are some gaps here that we need to fill in." Arya bit her lip thoughtfully. Maybe there's something in my parents' house that could help us. I haven't had the courage to go through their things yet, but..." Lena squeezed Arya's hand gently. "I'll go with you. You don't have to do it alone." Hours later, Arya was standing in her father's study, surrounded by a lifetime of memories. Family photos adorned the walls, mixed with certificates of business achievements. The familiar smell of old books and leather filled the air, bringing tears to Arya's eyes. "Where do we start?" Lena asked softly, respecting her friend's emotional moment. Arya took a deep breath, forcing herself to concentrate. "My father always kept the important documents in a safe behind that painting," she said, pointing to an abstract painting on the wall. Carefully, they removed the painting, revealing the built-in safe. Arya hesitated for a moment before typing in the combination, the date of her birth. With a soft click, the safe opened. Inside were a series of carefully organized folders and documents. Arya and Lena began to examine them methodically, the silence broken only by the occasional rustle of papers. Suddenly, Arya gasped, her wide eyes fixed on a document in her hands. "Lena, look at this." Lena leaned over, her eyes quickly scanning the paper. "My God," she whispered. "That's a network of corruption," Arya added, her voice shaking, "involving Damon and other company executives." The document detailed a series of suspicious transactions, embezzlement, and shady deals. Damon's name appeared repeatedly, along with other names that Arya recognized as members of the company's board. "That explains why Damon is so desperate to take control," Lena said, her lawyer's mind already working through the implications. "If this information came to light, he'd be destroyed," Arya concluded, a mixture of shock and anger growing inside her. "They all would be." Lena put a comforting hand on Arya's shoulder. "This changes everything. We have to be very careful what we do next." Arya nodded, her mind spinning with the possibilities. "We need more information, someone who can confirm this, maybe even give us more details." A name popped into Arya's mind. "Victor," she said suddenly. "My parents' old friend. He's still an executive in the company. If anyone knows what's going on, it's him." Lena considered for a moment. "It's risky, but it could be our best chance. Do you think you can trust him?" Arya hesitated, remembering the look of genuine sympathy in Victor's eyes at the funeral. "I think so. He's always been loyal to my parents. Maybe he can be loyal to me too." The two women exchanged determined glances. The game had changed, and now they had an advantage that Damon hadn't expected. "Let's arrange a meeting with Victor," Lena said, her voice firm. "It's time to find out who our true allies are in this battle." Arya nodded, feeling a new wave of determination flow through her. For the first time since her parents' death, she felt she had a purpose, a path to follow. As they carefully stored the documents, Arya couldn't help but think of her parents. Did they know what was going on in their company? Had they left these clues on purpose, hoping that she would find them? Regardless of the answers, one thing was certain. Arya would not let her parents' legacy be tarnished by corruption and greed. With Lena at her side and the truth as her weapon, she was ready to fight. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the office, Arya and Lena left the house, carrying with them not only precious documents but also a new sense of purpose and determination. The battle had only just begun, but now, at least, they knew what they were fighting against. Victor's office on the 30th floor of the Montgomery Enterprises skyscraper was a study in contrast. The glass walls offered a breathtaking view of the city, but the interior was cozy, with dark wooden bookshelves filled with books and framed photographs. Arya found herself looking at one of these photos. Herself, a child, sitting on her father's lap, with Victor by her side, all smiling for the camera. "I remember that day." Victor's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. He was standing in the doorway, his gray hair carefully combed, his eyes tired but alert. "It was at the company picnic, wasn't it? You just lost your first tooth." Arya smiled faintly, feeling a pang of nostalgia. "Yes, I remember. Dad said the front tooth would fall out in time for the Christmas photo." Victor laughed softly, but the sound was quickly replaced by a heavy sigh. He moved to sit behind his desk, gesturing for Arya and Lena to sit in the chairs in front. "So," he said, putting his hands together on the table, "you said you needed to see me urgently. What can I do for you, Arya?" Arya exchanged a quick glance with Lena before turning to Victor. "Victor, We found something my parents left behind. Victor's face remained impassive, but Arya noticed a slight tremor in his hands. And what would that be? Lena intervened, her voice calm and professional. Mr. Hawthorne, we found documents that suggest a network of corruption within the company. Documents that implicate several executives, including Damon Montgomery. The silence that followed was deafening. Victor closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing a physical blow. When he opened them again, there was a mixture of resignation and determination in his gaze. I was afraid this might happen, he finally said. Your parents, they suspected something was wrong. But they never got any concrete proof. Arya leaned forward, her heart racing. Did you know? All this time? Victor nodded slowly. I knew there was something wrong, yes, but the extent, the depth of the corruption, that I didn't know. Your parents asked me to keep an eye on it, to try and find out more, but it's like swimming in shark-infested waters, Arya. One wrong move and you're eaten. Lena frowned, her analytical mind already working out the implications. Mr. Hawthorne, do you have any additional information that could corroborate what we've found, something that could help us build a solid case? Victor hesitated, his eyes moving between Arya and Lena. I have a few things, information I've collected over the years, but it's dangerous, you know? These people, they wouldn't hesitate to destroy anyone who threatened their interests. Arya felt a wave of determination rise up inside her. She stood up, walking over to the window. Below, the city stretched out, alive and pulsing. Her parents' company had helped shape this landscape, had touched countless lives. She couldn't let it all be corrupted by greed. Turning back to Victor, she said, I understand the risk, Victor, but I can't stand by and watch as my parents' legacy is destroyed. I have to fight. Victor watched her for a long moment, as if seeing her for the first time. Then slowly, a smile formed on his face. You're just like your mother. You know that? She had that same fire in her eyes when she decided to fight for something. He stood up, walking over to a painting on the wall. With a soft click, the frame opened, revealing a built-in safe. Victor typed in a combination and pulled out a thick folder. Here, he said, handing the folder to Arya. This contains everything I've managed to gather over the last few years. Emails, records of suspicious transactions, recordings of conversations. It's dangerous, but it could be the key to exposing the whole operation. Arya picked up the folder with trembling hands, feeling the weight of its contents. Not just physical, but emotional. Victor, I don't know how to thank you. Victor shook his head, placing a hand gently on Arya's shoulder. No need to thank me. Your parents were more than my bosses, Arya. They were my family, and family protects family. Lena, who had remained silent, observing the interaction, finally spoke. Mr. Hawthorne, you understand that by giving us this information, you're putting yourself at risk too, don't you? Victor nodded gravely. I understand that, but I've kept quiet for long enough. It's time to do the right thing. As they prepared to leave, Victor took Arya aside. There's something else you need to know, he said, his voice low. Damon, he's involved in an extramarital relationship with one of the company executives. Arya felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Despite everything Damon had done, this final betrayal hurt in a way she hadn't expected. Who? She managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. Melissa Thornton, Victor replied, the compassion evident in his eyes. Head of the finance department. They've been discreet, but not discreet enough. Arya closed her eyes, taking a deep breath to calm herself. When she opened them again, there was a new determination in her gaze. Thank you for telling me, Victor, for everything. As Arya and Lena left the office, Arya's mind was spinning with all the new information, the corruption, the betrayal, the lies. It all seemed so overwhelming, but in the midst of the chaos, she felt a spark of hope. With Victor by her side, with the evidence in her hands, maybe she really could win this battle. In the elevator, Lena broke the silence. "Are you okay?" Arya looked at her friend, a small smile forming on her lips. "No," she admitted, "but I'm staying. We have work to do." The elevator doors opened and the two women stepped out into the busy lobby. Outside, the city waited, unaware of the storm that was about to break. Arya clutched the briefcase to her chest, feeling the weight of its contents and the weight of the responsibility she now bore. The battle was just beginning, but for the first time since all this started, Arya felt she had a real chance of winning. With unexpected allies and the truth on her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. Her parents' legacy, the future of the company, her own integrity, everything was at stake. And Arya Montgomery had no intention of giving up without a fight. Damon's office was plunged into an artificial dimness, the closed shutters blocking out the midday light. Arya stopped in the doorway, her heart beating hard against her chest. She took a deep breath, remembering everything she had discovered over the last few days. With renewed determination, she knocked on the door. "Come in," Damon's voice sounded, cold and distant. Arya entered, closing the door softly behind her. Damon was sitting behind his imposing desk, his eyes fixed on the computer screen. He barely looked up when she approached. "Damon," Arya began, her voice firmer than she expected. "We need to talk." He finally looked at her, a humorless smile playing on his lips. "All about what, dear? Haven't I made my position clear?" Arya felt a surge of anger rise in her chest, but held it back. "About your affair with Melissa Thornton." Damon's smile faltered for a moment, almost imperceptibly, before widening into an expression of derision. "Affair? Arya, you're getting paranoid. Melissa is a co-worker, nothing more." "Don't lie to me," Arya exploded, her hands shaking. "I know everything, Damon. About the case, about the corruption in the company, about your plans to take control." Damon stood up slowly, his eyes now fixed on Arya with a predatory intensity. "And what exactly do you think you know?" Arya felt a shiver run down her spine but held her ground. "Enough to destroy you, if I wanted to." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy with tension. Then, to Arya's surprise, Damon began to laugh. It wasn't a cheerful laugh, but a cold, calculating sound that made her instinctively recoil. "Oh, Arya," he said, stepping around the table to approach her. "Do you really think you can threaten me? That you can win this game?" Arya raised her chin, refusing to be intimidated. "It's not a game, Damon. It's my life, my family's legacy." Damon stopped inches from her, his expensive perfume mixing with the scent of whiskey on his breath. "A legacy you have no ability to protect. Be sensible, Arya. Leave this to me and we can settle everything amicably." For a brief moment, Arya saw the man she thought she had fallen in love with. Charming, confident, seemingly concerned. But now she could see through the facade, the greed and cruelty that had always been there, hidden under a mask of affection. "No," she said simply, taking a step back. "It's over, Damon. You're not going to win this time." She turned to leave, but Damon's hand grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "You have no idea what you're doing," he hissed, his eyes blazing with barely contained rage. Arya let go, her heart racing. "Don't touch me, ever again." She left the office, her legs shaking, but her resolve stronger than ever. As she walked down the corridor, her phone vibrated. It was a message from Lena. "I found something important. Meet me at the cafe around the corner in 15 minutes. Arya took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves as she walked down the elevator. The confrontation with Damon had been intense, but also liberating. She was no longer the submissive, naive wife he thought he could manipulate. In the cafe, Lena was already waiting, a thick folder on the table in front of her. Her face lit up with concern when she saw Arya's shaken expression. "What happened?" she asked, pushing a cup of tea towards her friend. Arya sat down, her hands wrapping around the warm cup. "I confronted Damon about the case and the corruption." Lena's eyes widened. "Arya, that was dangerous. He denied everything, of course," Arya interrupted her. "But I saw it in his eyes, Lena. He knows we're close to something big." Lena nodded gravely, then opened the folder. "And it's gotten even bigger. Look at this." Arya examined the documents Lena showed her. Emails, financial reports, obscure contracts. Everything pointed to a network of corruption far more extensive than they had initially imagined. "This is unbelievable," Arya muttered, flipping through the pages. "How did we get all this?" Lena smiled, a glint of triumph in her eyes. "I had a little help. Remember Nolan, our college classmate? He works in the company's IT department now. When he heard what was going on, he decided to help us." Arya felt a wave of gratitude and relief. "Nolan? Wow, I haven't seen him for years. Did he really do all this for us?" "For you, actually," Lena said with a suggestive smile. "I guess he never got over that crush he had on you in college." Arya blushed slightly, remembering the shy, kind boy who was always willing to help her with her computer work. "Nolan, we need to thank him in person. That changes everything." Lena nodded, her face becoming serious again. "Yes, but it also increases the risk. If Damon or any of the others involved find out that we have this information, they'll do anything to stop us," Arya added, a shiver running down her spine. The two friends exchanged worried glances. The game had changed dramatically and the stakes were higher than ever. "What do we do now?" Arya asked, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Lena closed the folder carefully. "First, we need to make sure that this information is secure. Then I think it's time for a meeting with Nolan. We need all the help we can get." Arya nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. She picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over Nolan's contact for a moment before pressing call. As the phone rang, Arya looked out of the cafe window, watching the people passing by, oblivious to the drama unfolding. She thought of her parents, the legacy they had built, the lives they had touched. She couldn't let all that be destroyed by greed and corruption. "Hello," Nolan's familiar voice sounded on the other end of the line. Arya took a deep breath. "Nolan? It's Arya. We need to talk." Great. As she made an appointment with Nolan, Arya felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. The road ahead was uncertain and dangerous, but for the first time in weeks, she felt that she wasn't alone in this struggle. With Lena by her side and unexpected allies emerging, maybe, just maybe, she had a chance of winning this battle and preserving her family's legacy. And in the process, maybe she would discover a strength she didn't even know she possessed. The cafe was almost empty when Nolan entered, his eyes scanning the room until they found Arya and Lena sitting in an inconspicuous corner. He hesitated for a moment, adjusting his thin-framed glasses before approaching the table. "Hello, Arya. Lena," he greeted, his soft voice carrying a mixture of nervousness and determination. "Long time no see." Arya looked at the man in front of her, noticing the subtle changes since their college days. Nolan's brown hair was shorter now, and there was a confidence in his posture that wasn't there before. But his eyes behind the lenses still had that gentle twinkle she remembered so well. "Nolan," Arya smiled, indicating the empty chair. "Please sit down. You don't know how grateful we are that you came." As Nolan settled down, Lena pushed the document folder to the center of the table. "First of all, Nolan, we need to thank you. What you did, the information you got, that changes everything." Nolan blushed slightly, his fingers drumming on the edge of the table. I just did what was right. When I started noticing strange patterns in the financial records, I knew something was wrong. And when I heard about what was happening to you, Arya, well, I couldn't stand by." Arya felt a wave of emotion run through her. She reached out, covering Nolan's hand with her own. "You put yourself at risk for us, Nolan. I can't thank you enough." Arya's touch seemed to take Nolan by surprise. He looked down at their joined hands, a slight tremor on his lips. "I'd do it again," he said softly, meeting her eyes. 1,000 times, if I had to." Lena sniffled softly, bringing her attention back to the situation at hand. "Nolan, based on what you've discovered, what do you think our next step is?" Nolan took a deep breath, going into professional mode. "Well, the records show a clear pattern of embezzlement and suspicious transactions. The problem is that everything was done very carefully. We need more than just digital records to build a solid case." "What about the employees?" Arya asked, leaning forward. "Surely someone must have noticed something." Nolan nodded slowly. "Yes, there are rumors going around, but most of them are afraid to speak out. Damon and his inner circle have created an atmosphere of fear in the company." Lena frowned, her legal mind already working through the implications. "We need someone willing to testify, someone from within Damon's circle." A thoughtful silence fell over the table, each of them lost in their own thoughts. It was Arya who finally broke the silence, her voice laden with a mixture of determination and vulnerability. What if I got close to Damon again?" Lena and Nolan turned to her, eyes wide with surprise and concern. "Arya, no," Lena began, but Arya held up a hand to silence her. "Listen, I know Damon better than anyone. I know how he thinks, how he acts. If I could get closer, pretend I want reconciliation." Nolan shook his head vehemently. "It's too dangerous, Arya. Damon isn't stupid. He'll get suspicious." Arya looked at her two friends, feeling the weight of their worries. But there was something stronger growing inside her, a fierce determination she hadn't known she possessed until that moment. "I know it's risky," she said softly. "But think about it. Damon is arrogant. He thinks he knows me, that he can manipulate me. If I play his game, if I pretend to give in..." Lena leaned forward, her eyes shining with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Do you think you can get him to let his guard down?" Arya nodded slowly. "I think so. And if we can not only collect more evidence, but also find out who else is involved." Nolan looked torn, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "Arya, I can't stand the idea of you putting yourself in danger. I'll monitor all communications, make sure you have a direct line to us at all times." Arya looked at her friends, feeling a wave of gratitude and affection. "I don't know what I'd do without you two." As they discussed the details of the plan, Arya couldn't help but notice the way Nolan looked at her, a mixture of admiration, concern, and something deeper that she couldn't name. It was a look that warmed her inside, giving her strength for what was to come. When they finally got up to leave, the sun was already setting, casting long shadows across the city. Arya stood in the doorway of the cafe, staring at the burning skyline. "We're really doing it," she muttered. more to herself than to the others. Lena put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We are, and we're going to win." Nolan approached from the other side of Arya, his presence silent but comforting. "Together," he said simply. Arya took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of fear and determination flow through her. The road ahead was uncertain and dangerous, but for the first time since all this began, she didn't feel alone. With Lena and Nolan at her side, with the truth as her most powerful weapon, Arya was ready to face Daemon and all those who threatened to destroy her family's legacy. The game was about to change, and Arya Montgomery was determined to be the winner. As they walked together down the busy street, Arya felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. The future was uncertain, but with friends like these, she knew she could face any challenge that came her way. Arya's reflection in the elevator mirror looked almost unrecognizable. Her tight black dress, the high heels, the red lipstick, everything screamed confidence and seduction. But inside, her heart was beating frantically against her chest. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, adjusting a lock of hair. "You have to." The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor of Montgomery Enterprises. Arya took a deep breath and stepped out, her heels echoing down the silent corridor. It was late at night, and she knew Daemon would be working late, as usual. As she approached his office, Arya felt the weight of the small listening device hidden in his necklace. Lena and Nolan would be listening in, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. This awareness gave her a pinch of extra courage. She knocked softly on the door. "Come in," Daemon's voice sounded from inside. Arya opened the door to find Daemon sitting behind his desk, the light from the lamp casting dramatic shadows on his face. He looked up, surprise evident in his expression. "Arya, what are you doing here so late?" She entered, closing the door behind her. I needed to see you, Daemon." Daemon leaned back in his chair, his eyes roaming over Arya's body with barely disguised interest. "Is that so? And why would that be?" Arya approached the table, her heart racing. She could feel Daemon's gaze on her and fought the urge to cringe. Instead, she leaned over the table, letting her cleavage show. "I've been thinking a lot, Daemon. About us, about the company, about everything." Daemon raised an eyebrow, a slow smile forming on his lips. "Go on." Arya came around the table, approaching Daemon. She could smell the familiar scent of his perfume, a mixture of sandalwood and musk that had once made her feel safe, but now only nauseated her. "I was foolish," she said softly, her hands resting on his shoulders. "I thought I could run the company on my own, but you were right. I need you, Daemon." Daemon's eyes shone with barely contained triumph. He stood up, his hands finding Arya's waist. "I knew you'd understand eventually, sweetheart. You've always been smart." Arya fought the urge to pull away. Instead, she leaned closer, her lips almost touching Daemon's ear. "Can you forgive me for being so stubborn?" Daemon laughed softly, his hand sliding down Arya's back. "Of course, my love. Now that you see things my way, we can make this work. Together, we'll be unstoppable." Arya pulled away slightly, looking into Daemon's eyes. "Tell me your plans, Daemon. How are we going to make this work?" For a moment, she saw a glimmer of suspicion in his eyes, but then Daemon smiled, that arrogant smile she knew so well. "Well, for a start, we need to get rid of those old-fashioned directors. I have some methods to persuade them to sell their shares." "Methods?" Arya asked, trying to keep her voice casual as her heart raced. "What kind of methods?" Daemon leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Let's just say I have some compromising information about some of them. And for the others, well, a little financial pressure can work wonders." Arya felt a wave of nausea but forced a smile. "You've always been so creative, Damon." He laughed, pulling her closer. "That's why we make such a good team, darling. Your beauty, my brain, will dominate the market in a matter of months." As Damon continued to detail his plans, Arya felt every word like a weight on her heart. The extent of the corruption, the coldness with which he talked about ruining lives. It was almost too much to bear, but she stood her ground, smiling and nodding at the right moments, asking strategic questions that she knew Lena and Nolan would want to hear the answers to. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Damon looked at his watch. "It's getting late. How about we continue this conversation somewhere more private?" Arya felt a shiver of fear run down her spine, but she kept her smile in place. "Actually, Damon, I have a better idea." She turned away from him, walking to the office door. With a swift movement, she opened it, revealing Lena, Nolan, and 2 policemen standing outside. Damon's face paled, the realization of what was happening slowly registering in his eyes. "Arya, what?" "It's over, Damon," Arya said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "We have everything on tape, your confessions, your plans, everything." The officers entered, reading Damon his rights as they handcuffed him. He struggled briefly, his eyes fixed on Arya with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You can't do this to me," he shouted as he was led away. "I built this company. I am this company." Arya watched as Damon was taken away, feeling a complex mix of emotions: relief, sadness, a hint of fear for the unknown future. But most of all, she felt an overwhelming wave of liberation. Lena moved closer, putting an arm around Arya's shoulders. "You were amazing," she whispered. "So brave." Nolan joined them, his eyes shining with admiration. "We got all the evidence we needed. It's the end of the line for Damon and his cronies." Arya looked at her friends, feeling a wave of gratitude. "We couldn't have done it without you too. Thank you for everything." As the 3 of them left the office together, Arya felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, she felt truly hopeful. Outside, the night sky was dotted with stars. Arya looked up, thinking of her parents. "I hope you're proud," she whispered to the sky. And as she walked into the night with Lena and Nolan by her Inksei, Arya knew that no matter what the future held, she was ready to face it, stronger, wiser, and finally, free. The conference hall at Montgomery Enterprises was packed. The nervous buzz of conversation ceased when Arya entered, dressed in a navy blue suit that radiated confidence and determination. Her eyes roamed the room, meeting familiar faces, shareholders, directors, longtime employees, all waiting to hear what she had to say. Lena and Nolan were sitting in the front row, their gazes conveying strength and silent support. Arya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just the end of a dark chapter in the company's history. It was the start of something new. "Good morning, everyone," Arya began, her firm voice echoing through the microphone. "Thank you for being here today. I know the last few weeks have been turbulent, to say the least." A murmur of agreement ran through the room. Arya continued. "Montgomery Enterprises was founded by my parents with a clear vision: to create a company that not only generated profits, but also made a difference in the world. In recent years, we've lost sight of that vision." She paused, letting her words sink in. In the eyes of many, she saw guilt, regret, but also hope. "The actions of Damon Montgomery and his associates have tarnished our reputation and betrayed the trust that so many of you have placed in this company. Today, I am here not only to address those mistakes, but to chart a new path forward." Arya turned on the presentation behind her, showing graphs and spreadsheets that detailed the extent of the corruption that had been uncovered. These are the facts: embezzlement, bribery, stock manipulation. The list is long and painful. But it is crucial that we face this reality head-on. She observed the reactions of the audience: shock, indignation, sadness. But on many faces she also saw determination. Starting today, we will implement a series of reforms. First, a complete and independent audit of all our operations. Second, a new code of ethics that will be rigorously applied at all levels of the company. And third, a compensation program for those who have been harmed by our past actions. Arya paused, letting the magnitude of her words sink in. Then her voice softened, charged with emotion. But more than policies and procedures, we need a change of heart. We need to rediscover the purpose that drove my parents to build this company. It's not just about profits. It's about making a difference, about building a better future. She looked directly into the camera that was broadcasting the meeting to employees around the world. To every employee who has felt powerless, who has seen the wrong things happening but has been afraid to speak up, I hear you. For every customer who has been cheated, we will make things right. For every community that has been affected by our actions, we will rebuild trust, one day at a time. The room was absolutely silent, all eyes fixed on Arya. She could feel the weight of her words, the responsibility she carried. But for the first time in weeks, she also felt hope. It won't be easy. There will be challenges, sacrifices. But I believe in the heart of this company. I believe in the people in this room and in all our employees around the world. Together we can not only get through this dark time, but emerge stronger, more ethical, and more dedicated to the common good than ever before. Arya paused for a final time, her eyes shining with determination. Who is with me on this journey? For a moment, silence persisted. Then slowly, one person stood up, then another, and another. Within seconds, the whole room was on its feet, a deafening applause echoing off the walls. Arya felt tears well up in her eyes, but this time they were tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope. She looked at Lena and Nolan, who were smiling broadly, their own eyes shining with emotion. When the applause finally died down, Arya concluded, "Thank you. Now, let's get to work." The next few hours were a whirlwind of meetings, interviews, and planning. Arya moved from one appointment to another, her mind focused and determined. It was only at the end of the day, when the office was finally quiet, that she allowed herself a moment of reflection. Sitting in the chair that once belonged to her father, Arya looked at the photo of him and her mother on the desk. "I hope they're proud," she whispered. A soft knock on the door brought her out of her thoughts. It was Victor, his face tired, but his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and something else, something Arya couldn't decipher. "Arya," he said softly, "there's something I need to tell you." She gestured for him to come in, noticing the envelope in his hands. "What is it, Victor?" He sat down opposite her, his hands shaking slightly. "I found this in your mother's belongings. It's a diary, and there's something in it that you need to know." Arya took the diary carefully, feeling the weight of its secrets. Slowly, she opened it to the page marked by Victor. As she read, her eyes widened, her heart racing. She looked at Victor, understanding slowly forming. You're my brother?" Victor nodded, tears in his eyes. "Your mother, our mother, had an affair before she married your father. I'm the result. She gave me up for adoption, but she always kept me close, giving me a job at the company when I grew up." Arya stood up, coming around the table. Without hesitation, she hugged Victor, feeling years of secrets and pain dissolve in that embrace. "Brother," she whispered, the word laden with emotion. When they finally parted, both with tears in their eyes, Arya smiled. "Well, it looks like we have a lot to talk about, and a lot of work ahead of us." Victor nodded, a smile forming on his face. "Together?" "Together," Arya confirmed. As the two sat down to discuss the future of the company and of their newfound family, Arya felt a peace she hadn't experienced for a long time. The road ahead was still long and challenging, but now she knew she wasn't alone. Outside, the city lights shone against the night sky, a reminder of the world waiting to be changed. And inside that office, two newly reunited brothers began planning exactly how they would make that change happen. Their parents' legacy would live on, not just through the company, but through the love and determination of their children. And as Arya looked to the future, she knew that no matter what came, she was ready to face it, with courage, with integrity, and, above all, with love. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to like and subscribe to the channel. Your support inspires us to bring new, exciting stories. Support the channel by clicking the link in the first comment or scanning the QR code on your screen. Share this story with someone special and leave a comment about what you'd like to see next. Get ready for the amazing story that is unfolding on your screen right now.